Um, Hello, everyone. Some of you I've met before, some of you haven't. My name is James Aikman. I look after the NHS piece for JIFJAF, predominantly the MyBotGP range. On this call with me is Sanjeev, a quick wave in the background. If you can see him, he runs our technical teams. Between us, we look after everything to do with MyBotGP. Sanj will jump in if we have any specific questions that we need him to help with. If not, he's going to sort of mute everyone, unmute everyone, and help with questions and things like that. So I've got a deck to go through with you, a presentation which you will have all had a copy of already, and with an overview. So it's nothing new, but I'm going to quickly talk through that. What I want to do today is to leave this quite open and flexible. So if you have questions to ask, I'm more than happy to stop and start. We can do a Q&A at the end as well. So don't sort of hold back if you've got something that you want to ask. This is a very specific topic. Filing normal blood tests is complex in itself, just as you know. Just because the word normal is on there doesn't devalue the checks that need to be done to define whether those are filtered on normal or abnormal. So who are JIFJAF? So essentially we are, as you know, specialists in software automation, and we build products for primary care. We have a background in the acute space, and this conversation today is around primary care. So we've got stuff pinging in the background here, coming in. Still got people coming in like one after another. We've been around some time. We've worked in a number of different areas. And what we've done is we've built out a product set under a brand name of MyBotGP, which we believe will make a big difference in primary care, because the reality is you all work in different ways. And one of the challenges that we saw with other automation work and ways of working and products that we did is that they enforced you to some extent to try to standardize, and you're almost using different types of bots, which weren't purpose built for primary care. It took a long time to get through IT, had issues with, and had various other issues. So we're proud also to say, and I share this deck, that we recently won a place on Digital Health London, funded by the Health Innovation Network and UK government and the NHS, for a place on their Launchpad program, which we're really proud of, and that's part of for the MyBotGP range. So a little bit more about us, and then I'll jump into this presentation, which you will have had a copy of. Hopefully these people will all be admitted by now. This ping is quite distracting. And then we can go into a bit more detail in the product itself. So the call today is around MyBotGP. And what is MyBotGP? So MyBotGP, the whole concept before this, around this, is, if you think of it as from a software perspective, it's a bespoke product, and the range are bespoke products that do very specific things. MyBotGP, the logic behind it is it's an email. We email it to you. It's a 5-minute download, and then it's a couple of hours to configure it, and then it's live. And that is the premise of the MyBotGP range. And then within that, you can set your rules yourself. You can set your own logic within the parameters of what you're doing yourself. And the reason we've done that is we've worked with lots of practices on their own. We've worked with PCNs, and we've worked with federations and ICBs. And what we've seen, and something that you all know, is everybody does everything in a slightly different way. You all have a similar way of working, but fundamentally there are different things that people like to do at their practice and even within a practice. So something like a normal pathology filing, again, as you know, for the clinicians here, even the logic used to file normal blood tests within a practice, different clinicians will have different approaches as to how they filter on a normal or an abnormal and appropriate action. So what we've done is we're really excited and proud that we've built something that lets you do what you want. Essentially, it takes your logic, and then you can use your logic how you want to in order to do the task that you want it to. And the product here is for filing normal blood tests. So in principle, we could send an email now to a PCN of 5 or 10 practices, or a federation of 10, 20, 30, 40 practices, everyone will get the email at the same time. It's a 5-minute download at each practice and then a couple of hours to configure it, and everybody will have their own copy. And then with their own copy, they can configure it as they want. So you can account for differences in chain, differences in approach. Sanj, can you mute everyone? So I can hear people in the background. Yeah, can you? James, we can't hear you.
I think when he said mute everybody, it was everybody but him, but unfortunately he was also muted.
James, you're muted still. No, we can't hear you still.
Done it. Am I back?
There you go. You're back.
Thank you. Oh, a bit of small panic there for a moment. Thank you. Okay, so I'll spin through this as quickly as possible, and then we can get to the demos and ask some questions. So as I touched on before, we're really proud to have won a place on this, which is something that's funded by UK government, run by Health Innovation Network, in order to bring new innovations into the NHS. And for this particular product, it goes without saying, there's DCB 0129 certification, which is for clinical risk and super important, and something that's coming up a lot recently around automation, which I think is being overcomplicated, but it's just because it's new technology is obviously DPIAs and DTACs, which we can cover off as well. In principle, you're checking the questions. In principle, as I touched on before, what MyBotGP is essentially they're clinically driven automations, whereby we can email everyone a copy of it. It's a 5-minute download, and then it can be configured themselves. Now, we did a lot of, and how did we get here? So again, I'll just cover this very quickly. This is the challenge for primary care, as you know. 630 million blood tests annually, 300,000 daily tests, and an annual of 50 million reports to GPs. Now, a large percentage of these are normal, and normal doesn't mean normal without any additional checks. Normal means, to some extent, you can apply some logic to it, and then after you've added that logic to it, you can make a decision whether you need to investigate further or not. Now, what we saw, and I'll skim over to this slide here. If I get to here. Now, what we saw essentially in our work in primary care for normal pathology filing is that everybody does everything in a slightly different way. So as a project a couple of years ago, what we tried to do is to see, could we take everybody's logic and could we build a product that incorporated everybody's logic? And again, I'll show a demo in a moment so you can actually see it working. Incorporate everybody's logic to and then allow you to make a decision around which pieces of that logic do you want to use. So an example of that is, we were asked to automate processes for practices, and some would say, I only want to file those bloods on minimum maximum ranges. Another practice would say, well, my pathology reports look slightly different, so I like to leverage those, and I want to do keyword checks on the pathology results and look for minimum maximum ranges for the same blood test. Another practice might say, well, I don't really work that way, I just like to look at a question mark. And another practice might say, well, I like to use other pieces of logic as well. But essentially, in summary, what we saw is that this is the logic that incorporates most of the tests most of the rules that are used to define a normal pathology test result. So we saw people file based on minimum maximum ranges, so obviously parameters. People file based on keyword checks or absence of keyword checks. And what I mean by that is, as I touched on before, the lab reports. Some have keywords, some don't have keywords, and you can even have the same blood test with a different keyword for a different pathology, a different lab report. Some people like to look at the patient history, obviously, to look at a previous test result. So they want to go back to one test result or two test results. Other people look at gender. and the others based on previous test results in terms of time. Some people like to look back at time increments, i.e. 6 months or 12 months or 3 months. And then obviously there's age. So what we did with MyBotGP is we managed to build a product, essentially, going back to, as I said before, that is a 5-minute download and a couple of hours to configure that we can email you. So it'll be up and running within half a day, where you can use all of this logic for every single blood test, or one piece of logic, or 2 pieces of logic, or 3 pieces of logic for each blood test. You can slice it and dice it and cut it up as you wish at practice level. So no one is telling you what rules you need to follow in order to filter on a normal or an abnormal blood test. Now, in addition to that, what's really important is it has a dashboard with full analytics to show everything that's been touched, and we can cover that off in a bit more detail in a moment. So that's super important, with full audit trails. So for the first time, you'll be able to see every single blood test that's been classed as normal based on your logic, stored in a secure part of MyBotGP that can be used for test, to go back and double check for records. The other thing that's really important that we saw is that people change their mind around what's classed as normal and ranges and things like that. So with MyBotGP, you can log in and out at any time and change the logic yourself within a matter of minutes to make a decision around whether you want to continue using that logic, whether you want to use a different logic, or whether you want to omit that blood test from MyBotGP. Obviously, we've built it to be able to schedule to run by itself. You can put particular times, or you can turn it on and off. And we built the ability to send text messages to patients if you want, and that can be through Accurix, through patches, through anything. And you can individually tick a box and say, I want to send text messages, or I don't want to send text message. We've also built the ability to manage within EMIS pop-ups, which is an interesting one. This will come to life a bit more in the demo, but this is what the front panel looks like. So when I say you can configure it yourself, this is what I mean. You'll be emailed MyBotGP, it'll be downloaded, and it will be, we pre-configure it, but let's imagine that it's blank for a moment. And then your clinician at the practice, the lead clinician, or whoever is going to make the decision, whoever's got the responsibility to do this, will look at each blood test, and you will set the rules yourself. So if we use this one as an example for liver is the first test, you double click on that, and now that's the one that you're going to set your parameters for. So what we've given you is the ability to almost replicate, we've given you the ability to replicate your rules, your brain, almost as if you're employing someone and you've given them a list of rules and said, if you see these are the rules you need to apply, and this is where it starts and this is where it stops, and you're allowed to do this. And this is what we've replicated through MyBotGP. So for a liver test, here is the first one that we're configuring. If you want to file it for a normal report, you just click on that. If you want to send a text message, you just click on that. If you know at your practice from your lab that for a liver test, you need MyBotGP to read the whole pathology report, which it will do, and to look for no keyword or an absence of a keyword, or to look for a keyword being present or a keyword being absent, or a keyword in the problem page, you just tick one of these boxes and then you physically write the keyword in there, and MyBotGP will know every time it opens up a pathology test report. It will read every single line that's on there, all of the different blood tests, and it will look for what you've told it to look for in there with accuracy that's obviously evidenced in the audit trail. Now this is really interesting as well here. We've seen that there are different keywords. I mean, we've done this so many times that we've actually even built a thing where there's free text in there. So if you know for liver, your lab report, your laboratory tends to write things with a different combination of commas or spaces or just a unique word, you can physically write that word in and press update, and then MyBotGP will know to look for that and to read it to help you make a decision around whether something should be filtered off to a clinician or whether it should be filed. Next, we've got here are the parameters. This is a bone of contention which we've addressed here. Here are the parameters. Now, let's say, for example, for liver, that's the parameter for serum albumin, 35 to 50. If you wanted to set that up as 35 to 50, you set it up and save it. If you then decided you wanted to change that a week later or the next day or every day, you can double click on MyBotGP. There's a username and a password. Obviously, there's some due diligence at practice level to say who's got permission to touch it and to change the parameters. But you can log in and change those parameters at will, and they are then tracked in the audit log. So you can see, for the last 3 months we've been filing based on these parameters, and the last 6 weeks we've been filing on those parameters. Now, if you wanted MyBotGP to go back and do a further search in the patient record to look for a percentage change, it's able to do that as well. So you can actually set it up here where you just click there, click yes, and then every time it sees liver, again, there are other blood tests we can give you more detailed explanation on, it will look at the current range, see if it's within the current range, or if it's outside the current range. You click yes and you tell it how many tests you'd like it to go back and review, generally the last test. It will go back into the patient record, open the test and look for a percentage change, and you decide what percentage change, increase or decrease, that it should do the calculation for on the difference, and save it. And then based on that logic, it will filter for clinician or file as normal. So you've got something where you can look for keywords, you can set your ranges, you can go to previous test results and look for percentage changes, all configurable in this platform. That you set the rules yourselves. Now, you all do stuff differently, not massively differently, but those differences, what we've seen, having worked so much in primary care, are important. And what we're seeing with MyBotGP now, we're helping people to be able to accommodate their differences in approach. It's generating immense interest. You're also able to add in sub blood test categories as well here. So if there's additional blood tests, you can manually write them in and save them. And I've got a demo for that in a moment. And then that will then be added, and you can go through that configuration as well. And finally, filing. File without comments or file with comments. If you want to file it without comments, all you have to do is tick that box. If you want to file with comments, you tick that box. So next we come to the reporting piece, which I'm going to skim over because something's happened there. Can you see me?
No, there's no slides. Yeah.
Can you see me now?
You see you? Yeah.
Are you back? Yeah. Okay, I share my screen again. Yeah, am I back again?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, apologies, Teams is grumpy today. I'm going to show you a demo now. So I'll come back to the reporting piece as well. Okay, can everyone see my screen still? Yeah, okay. So this is how you set up. We'll come to some questions. I can see stuff popping up here in the chat. We'll come to the questions in a moment. Yeah, we'll do them at the end. So this is what you'll see when you log in. So if I just set the scene, we've emailed you a link. You download the link, 5 minutes to download onto your computer. Set a username and a password, obviously a very specific username and password that only specific people have access to, because once you set the rules, this is what the logic that the tool will be following in the background. So you can't have people logging in and changing the parameters and other people not aware of that. All the stuff that you know. You set your username and password and log in. And you'll have a blank tool. I'll just pause it there quickly and move that over here. Just go back a tiny bit. And that is what you'll have at practice level. Now, this can be downloaded on someone's computer that they're using already. And when they're not using it, it can run. Just needs to sit on a normal computer, or it can live on a virtual machine or a hosted machine, depending on what access you've got. Or it can live on a machine by itself. We'd recommend it lives on a machine by itself, just so it's left alone. But in principle, if you don't have a spare machine, this can be downloaded onto that machine. And then when you're not using it, MyBotGP, you'll just turn it on and it will go ahead and do the jobs that it's supposed to do. We've built it in a way that it's very easy to consume. You struggle with technology in primary care. You don't often have the newest machines or the best machines. So we've built a product that can take that into consideration. So this is how you configure it, and this is just an example of how it's configured. So this is what you're looking at, and your partners will be looking at this as the front page, and they're saying, right, blood test rheumatoid factor. Now what they're doing here And you just watch it for a moment. Full blood count. So they are now configuring full blood count. And again, it comes pre-configured, but we'll show you. And again, pre-configured for you to change because they're obviously your rules. They're just templates. So you can see here for full blood count, you're manually adding in hemoglobin estimation, and you've got the ability to add in for both male and female. So what you're seeing now is it being added in for male. Now here's the ability, it's as simple as that. Now you're adding in hemoglobin estimation for female, and that's now been added to the full blood count rules to follow to make an assessment. Now what you're seeing is someone manually entering the ranges. Now they're the ranges we've used for the demo. You might want different ranges, and that's the whole point of this. You can put different ranges in. And here is saying, yeah, I want to look at the last 3 results and look for a 10% increase or decrease. And if you see a 10% increase or decrease, I want you to mark that as abnormal or leave it for clinician to review. That's not within the permission, the scope of permission. If you see, click update, and that's now saved. Let me just pause it there. And that's now been saved. So now you've told MyBotGP quite quickly that for full blood count, you want to add in those 2 tests. There are the parameters. And in order to validate whether they're correct, you're going to look for a 10% increase or decrease on the last 3 test results or 3 months or however you want in order to validate whether that's normal or abnormal. Now, what else is interesting, some of our clients have said that one of the things that they like about using this is that they can overrule the laboratories. So with some tests, not all of you, but some tests that some of the practices we're working with and are saying that the labs, that they don't agree with the ranges. So they're often seeing stuff as abnormal when it's normal. Well, you can set your own ranges in here, and MyBotGP will supersede those ranges. If the partners wanted to do that, then it would do that for you. So you're taking the lead. So I'll just run the demo again just to show you another piece. So HbA1c, obviously, keyword absent in the problem page. We've ticked that box over there. You write the word diabetes and send a text message, tick that box, update. Now it's been told to do that. Next one, bone profile. Look for a keyword absent. If you look for that word to be missing, that then filters off to an abnormal. Just show you a couple more demos of just configuring it. Liver function, adding in a new pathology test category for liver function test. So you manually write that in. Added it. Put your ranges. Oh, another test underneath. And this is the point of why we built this. It's a quick download product. It's tailor-made for EMIS, and System 1 will be coming out shortly. EMIS is live, but it's tailor-made and it's completely bespokeable by you at practice level. So as I said before, 20 practices could be emailed it at the same time. You all get your own copy, just needs to be downloaded onto a basic computer, and within a couple of hours you're up and running with your own logic. Now, one of the other things that we saw that you're able to do here is you're also able to set up multiple ranges. So let me just pause it here. So one of the things when we were automating this before we moved into building the MyBotGP range, some practices for stuff like prostate would say, I want to look at if someone's over 50 and they've got a normal test result, I still want to go back and look at the last test result and look for a 20% change. If there's more than a 20% change from the last test, then I then want that filtered off so it's looked at by a doctor. I don't want it filed. Other people that we work with have used MyBotGP to configure multiple ranges based on age. So MyBotGP will look at the test result, look at the age, and look at the ranges, and then go back into the stored logic across the ranges that have been set by you to determine a normal or abnormal. And that's another example of how we've given you the control to do what you want. So I'm just going to show you the next video here. Another thing to say about MyBotGP is there's no limit to how many bloods can be included. So there's not a, in the old days, it would be the top 5 or the top 10 or the top 20 that you were allowed to put into the automation. Here, yeah, there's no limit. You can put as many as you like, and you can also omit, obviously, blood tests as well. Now, what you're seeing now, this is with one of our clients. They've let us use this for demo purposes. It's been scheduled and it's being kicked off. It's anonymized. Obviously, there's some patient data on here, so you'll see lots of blurry stuff. But MyBotGP is now logging into EMIS with the username and password, its own username and password. Everything's tracked with the audit trail, which we'll cover off in a moment, as we touched on before. And it's just working away in the background, like a student helper that you've employed, and you said, right, look at these test results, and then use this logic, and then if it's sits in that bucket, you're allowed to file it, and if it doesn't sit in that bucket, you're not allowed to file it. That needs to be left for a clinician to look at. And it all stems back to the rules that I showed at the beginning, those 6 rules that we've seen, that you can use 1 or 2 or 3 or 6 on each blood test result in order to replicate the logic that you want to do, the parameters you want to set, the additional checks that you want to set, and the keywords that you want to look for at practice level. And I'll let this run for a minute, and then I'll get to the other piece at the end. We can show you the audit log as well, which is really really interesting, really comprehensive. You'll just see it's working its way through the screen. You'll see also at the end it skipped some blood tests, and some it hasn't, and it will say why it skipped them, like it wasn't given permission or they were out of scope. Just move this forward a little bit. See on the top right hand corner, it's just ticking away in the background. We've seen on an average copy of EMIS, so depending, obviously you've all got, and the same principle with system 1, depending how much information in there depends how quickly it goes, but we've seen on average about 30 seconds, give or take, Sanj, roughly a test. But stuff like time becomes irrelevant when you use MyBotGP, because it just runs in the background. So it goes from test to test to test to test, and it can run all day or all night. You can run it for a few hours each day. In our product suite, we have another 3 or 4 MyBotGPs that are going to go live in the next couple of months, and they will cover patient registrations, abnormal blood filing, Document, filing and coding in System 1, and potentially repeat prescriptions. And then what you'll have is everyone will have a copy of MyBotGP, and you'll have a drop-down menu, and there'll be some that you want to buy, some that you don't. And then you can schedule it to, I don't know, file your normal bloods at a particular time, then come out, then do a different job, and then come back and do a different job after that. And I'll get to the next piece here. It starts to be more interesting. Move that over there. So we get to roughly here, I think it starts. Yeah. So here you start to look at the audit, and this is what I was saying was super important. I think it's not taken into consideration enough. Bang. There is a full audit log of everything that it's touched, everything it's skipped because it wasn't allowed to look at it. It was either out of scope, and everything that it's filed. So if you imagine that across your practice, your PCN or federation or area, suddenly you've got full audit logs, fully downloadable, that you can you can start to evidence what you've done. And then also what's really important is if you decided to change the logic, some of the parameters that you were filtering on normals to abnormal in MyBotGP, once you've saved it, that's also tracked in the application. So it will say that, you know, from that month to this month they were filed with this logic, or from that month to the next month, you know, based on a different logic, and you can see where it was saved. So you've got a full audit trail. And we've had some ICBs starting some interesting conversations saying that once this is used at scale in large areas, we've got a way to anonymize all of the reporting dashboard from here. So you can even build out a dashboard quite easily where you could look for percentage changes, improvements from health initiatives to see if they've made a difference based on particular blood types, blood tests rather. Okay, so I think that's enough talking from me for the moment. So pass over to any questions. Just opening up the chat. Okay, so I've got them here. So we've got a bit of time left, so we can get through a few of these. So yeah, we're going to. We've got a recording. Everyone's muted. Yeah, thank you. Thankfully, we managed to sort that. So this is the question here from Geetha. 100%. Is it built for each individual? Yeah, we can do that. So there's different ways we can look at this. So what we've seen at the beginning now, and I'm not sure, I think things may evolve. In our head, it was going to be at practice level. So each practice would have a copy. The practice would come to an agreement, or whoever has the responsibility at the practice would make the decision around the parameters, and it would live at practice level. And then everything would triage off. However, what we've seen in reality is some different partners within a practice wanted their own copy. They wanted to apply their own rules, and that is also possible. I think long term, what will happen is you'll have one copy, but I think because it's still fairly a new concept, people will still feel quite, they want to apply their own rules. But I think what will happen is you'll come to an agreed generalized rules on the side of caution, and then if somebody is particularly passionate that a particular test is omitted, then those tests can be omitted from MyBotGP as well, and it won't be looked at. Is it possible to send an SMS? Yes, we're building all of that. That's not a problem. We just have to plug it in. Accurate System 1 patches. It's even possible to send emails if you wanted to, or whenever you have permission to do that. We can configure it to send emails. Yes is the answer to that. Accurate's pathway dependent on the result. Yeah, okay, so this is a good question here. So will MyBotGP track laboratory parameter ranges, or do we need to configure it ourselves? If we configure it, how do we manage various ranges depending on age and sex of patients? Sanj, do you want to cover that one?
Yeah. So through the setup panel, you'll have this one-off activity where you state your ranges, and then you can set your gender ranges as well. Essentially, so you would configure this as initial setup, let's call it. Once your filing rules are configured, they're saved, and then you can, on a sort of frequent basis, review those rules at practice level to make sure that they're in line with how you want to file. But it's very much a one-off setup that you would do initially, and then MyBotGP would be scheduled based on however the frequency of what you want to schedule it on, and that it would run on the background.
Yeah, thanks, Sanj. And then in addition to that, we've had one client whose the ranges have changed recently from the lab, so you can go back in and you can adjust that anytime you want, and that's a massive advantage because with other tooling it's fixed, and then you have to go back and you have to rebuild, and that can take time and there's additional cost. Here you could change, not that you would, but you could change, in principle, change the ranges every day yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think and what we're seeing is initially the ranges are a bit more tighter, or a bit more smaller, for want of a better word, obviously consuming the product, and then start to loosen up those ranges to be in line with how you would file normal pathology. Yeah,
and that's a really important thing. How we've seen how people go live, because people think it's great, but how do you start using it? I'll come back to the questions in a moment. You wouldn't do it anyway, but we wouldn't recommend it. But you wouldn't just sort of download it, plug it in, and turn it on, full blast it, and just start running everything through. What we've seen, and the preferred way of doing it, is you'll download the application, you'll open up MyBotGP, you'll pick a number of blood tests that you want to start with, maybe 4 or 5 blood tests or 6 blood tests, set the ranges, get used to the configuration panel, and then let it start to look at those. Then you can manually test it, and we've built the ability to do a dry run, so it will apply the logic and not do anything if you want, or some people like it in live, but they then go back and manually check it, let it run for a few days. It's like any new tech. When you get new email, it takes a bit of new email account, bit of time to get used to it, and then they start to increase the ranges. And then after sort of a couple of weeks, what we find, they add another 5 or 6, another 5 or 6, and then there's enough confidence built there that they understand the tooling, understand the audit logs, and then they just enter as many as they want to add in. This is a similar question to the other one, but asked in a different way. Is it one login per practice, or does the practice set up various logins for individuals? So there's 2 questions in one there in my head. You can have 1 copy per practice. You could have 10 copies per practice. It just is downloaded to a computer. Now the other side of that question is really important for your compliance. So who has access to it? Who sets the parameters, and who can change the parameters? So generally speaking, 1 person or 2 people or the partners at the practice will have the ability to make changes, but you do need to think about it and set up some kind of procedure or process so that people aren't logging in and changing parameters, and the other clinicians are working on the basis in the back of their head that logic is being applied to the blood that's now out of date. But it's stuff that anyway. You wouldn't just keep changing it at will. So in our head, 1 or 2 people have the login and the username, login and password. No one else can access the tool, and then you go through a change process if you want to do that. Sanj, can you answer that question? Can it handle results that are sent through as textual results, i.e. not read coded data? Have you heard that before?
I've not heard. Yeah, I'm not quite understanding that question. So what it does, it's basically going into the workflow manager and it's reading the test results from the screen. So any data that's passed through, that's where it's then compared against the setup, the ranges that you've applied in MyBotGP panel, and that's its source of truth, for want of a better word, is the actual lab test result. I don't know if that helps answer that question, but that's where it's reading it from, and then applying your logic, your rules, and then it's either normal or out of scope.
So we can, Tom, if that doesn't answer your question, you can pop an email after we have your details.
Exactly.
We can come back to that.
Happy, yeah.
Is there a rule that can ask if other blood test results are taken at the same time or abnormal or normal? Yep. When is it likely to be live in System 1? Not too long. Sanj, how long?
I would say around sort of 6 to 8 weeks, approximately.
So I'll give you a bit about our history. So we've been doing a lot of automation in primary care. So we've automated this for System 1 multiple times, and this was part of our journey to building MyBotGP, because in the old way, you'd have to get a third-party robot, you would have to copy someone's logic exactly, you then have to hope that they didn't change their mind, and we just didn't think it's sustainable long-term as the best way to support primary care, and that's why we stopped, and we've rebuilt everything in this way. So what I'm saying in System 1 is we've worked with System 1, we have it live in System 1 in test, but obviously it has to go through a testing phase, so it's in the final stages of that, and that should be ready for, I'll say 6 to 8 weeks, and Sanj will say 8 to 10 weeks, but if we take 8 roughly as the ballpark, it should be live, but there's no problem. And obviously System 1 has a slightly different logic to it, so you got the coding piece piece in addition to that as well. So for us as an organization, for MyBotGP, we're only planning on having about 6 to 8 products, which is actually 3 to 4 products. But if you think you've got to build it once in EMIS and once in System 1, so it's two different products. The query here, I'm presuming the logics are being assured by a clinical safety officer, GP site level. Yes, at your site. Yeah. Obviously we have a DCB 0129, but that needs to be signed off at your site. Your test your results in the same way that you use your brain to make your decisions as well. Yes, it's going to be on the new GPIT framework. That's just the framework's taking a bit longer to come out. There's been some delays with that, but the last meeting I was on, we're told that will be in spring, I believe. The new framework is due out. Sorry?
That's right.
Additional test data will be supplied to GIF Jaffa sites needing to validate logics before going live directly. Yeah, can do that. Do that.
Yeah, just to add that, the way it's consumed is we essentially send you a template. There's around sort of 60 odd blood test results in there, and as James said, you would then apply. You would agree that do the due diligence internally as to what you want to go live with, either as handful of blood test results, with a scope of sort of hitting up to 60 to 80 blood tests, as many as you like. Essentially, that the boundaries are, can you file within the logic that you can apply within that front end? Keywords, no keywords. Things like gender, vitamin D insufficiencies, et cetera, et cetera. So there's about sort of 8 or 9 ways you can file, and that opens up the doors to filing sort of 70 to 80 blood test results.
Perfect. So the query we covered on system 1 should be about 8 weeks. Interesting question. If the process is running on a machine at practice, does it become an unusable workstation just as processing times, or would it need to be permanently standalone? That doesn't sound like a big question, but that's actually a massive question, and that's one of the reasons we built MyBotGP. We built it so either. In the old days, you would need a dedicated machine with a big fat robot pointing at it and all this complicated stuff, but we built MyBotGP as a light download. So if you don't have a spare machine, or if your preference is to have it on your machine or a machine that's being used, it can live on there and it can run, but it can't be doing anything else while it's doing that. So it could run for a few hours, and then whoever's using that machine could go back on again. Or what we think will happen over a period of time is it will just sit on its own computer, and it might be doing, I don't know, system 1 normal bloods and coding at the same time on some kind of scheduler. Does it run constantly in the background? Only when it needs to, and we can put and there are timeouts. 100%.
You schedule it, and it's entirely up to you. You can have it run once a day. You can have it scheduled to run every hour, every 3 hours, 7 days a week through the night. And entirely up to you however you want to schedule it.
Yeah. Is it literally simulating mouse movements? So yeah, we are a vendor, which is a quite important differentiator. We actually create software. Obviously, we take clinical input. We work with clinicians through various steering committees, and we've built so whilst this is an automated product, we don't like calling it an automated product because it then falls into this band of automation, and then people start thinking about automation and robots and stuff. So this isn't a automation product in the purest sense whereby it's a robot. This is a bespoke built product for filing normal blood test results that happens to use some automation to file the blood test results. So it's more than that. But the short answer to your question, is it literally simulating the mouse movements and key presses? Yes, that's how we've configured it, because that's the lightest touch on EMIS. It's a quick download, and it will just replicate the keystrokes. And system 1, but obviously it's purpose built for the application, so it's very robust. Does it take all the pathology data into MyBotGP, or is it making decisions from the EMIS screen? Sanj?
Yeah, I can take this one. So it's a bit of both. Essentially, what it does when you apply your filing rules, that goes into the brain of MyBotGP, and then as it reads the screen, it's applying your rules to the actual pathology results. So, and then what it does do from an auditing perspective, it sends back metric data in terms of usage, blood test categories, file times, et cetera, and there's some more granular information in that audit section.
So only 27 filed and 141 skipped. Yeah, we did that intentionally. We didn't want to show you a demo of 141 and it filed all 141. Yeah, because that wouldn't be real. So what it's done there is some of those tests, if I can go back to that page, were X-rays, they were bone tests, there were other stuff it's told it's not supposed to look at, and others of the tests were outside of the remit. So we tried to show a nice mixture.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a lot higher. Obviously, you'd have a bigger set of blood test categories with filing rules, etc., and then it would just be let loose on your pathology results, etc., and then you'd have that a lot higher. But yeah,
we didn't want to just show 100 popped up and 100 filed. We thought it'd just be a bit corny. Sanj, do you want to cover that one? How does it look at patient history?
100%. So it goes into the problem page and patient history, and then you can set the keywords as to what you want in absence for. So in absence of the word diabetes, in absence of the word pre-diabetes, etc. So then it applies that, and then where it does not find that, on top of the actual ranges that you've applied, it will then classify that as a normal blood test result. but any keyword effectively, but comma delimited, and you can just pop that in the actual field.
So coming back to the next question is another interesting question for hubs. Yeah, it would. Is the short answer. Would this work for patients not registered with your specific S1 hub, or could it run using a host hub login? Yes, it can. So if you had a hub and you had 5 practices through the hub, you were all happy to use the same logic, to set the same parameters for the 5 practices, you could have one MyBotGP living at hub, applying all of the rules and filtering. But what makes it really interesting again is if you had people that wanted to sit outside of that, they could have their own copy as well. So you've got both options. Now this is a really good question as well. So how does the clinician know the normal not filed and results have been GP bot and now needs him or her to action? Sam, do you want to cover that? This came up in testing, and we've got quite a specific approach that we're using for this at the moment.
Yes, 100%. So essentially, where it's not filed, MyBotGP classifies it as skipped. And then if you see in the in the actual analytic panel, it's got a report where you can filter on the skipped blood test results. And why has it skipped those results? Can be one of multiple reasons. It could be, for example, that the ranges were out of range, so they were abnormal, and the keywords were not picked up. So again, it's where MyBotGP has gone to apply your rules, and the actual blood test result does not fall within the parameters of those rules, it will then classify that as skipped. And then what that means is on the actual pathology screen, it will leave it and it will move to the next patient.
We've kept it, we've kept it very clean. This is a normal pathology filing product, and from the steering groups, obviously we have a steering group of test practices and test sites that we work with. And this is the approach that we decided to take. We are looking at abnormal pathology filing, and we're working out how far we can safely replicate logic, and then we'll obviously then see whether that's enough logic to make it something that people would like to buy. Essentially, that's helpful. This is a very clean, normal pathology filing product, so it's not there to find the most complex condition, pick it out, address it. That's not for that. That today is for a person to do, and will remain for a person to do. This is to remove large chunks of work that people are doing, where if we can take their logic, apply the checks that they will apply, it will help. The next few questions are cost. So we've got a really clean pricing model. It's 30 pence a patient for list size. So total number of patients times 30 pence. So if it was 10,000 patients, it would be £3,000. And then there's a 499 setup cost or panel cost, and that's it. Very, very clean. Does it affect the speed of EMIS? No more than a person, less than a person, because what we've done is it's replicating a user. Is it literally simulating the movements? Yeah, that goes back to what we talked about before. It's not an automation product per se. We've moved away from that. This is a blood filing product that uses really specific logic, but the automation piece that's built into it, yes, replicates keystrokes. Sanj, do you want to cover that one? Can you explain assigning unified results, unfiled results rather?
Yeah, so MyBotGP filters on either the filters on pathology filter, and then goes through all of the unfiled results, and that can be a combination of normal and abnormal, as James said. There's 2 ways you can actually have set MyBotGP. You can actually set it that it only wants to look at normals, and then that filter you apply in the actual panel, or you can have it set where it looks at unfiled, and as you know, unfiled is a combination of normal and abnormal, but obviously it's only going to apply the rules that you've stated in the MyBotGP panel.
Roughly how many GP practices are currently using MyBotGP? So as of today, we officially launched with MyBotGP a couple of months ago, about 50 practices approximately. Last week we started working with another 7. They've not to be downloaded yet, and we've got a list of people that are signing up, so that number will be increasing. And that's another interesting point. What we're here to learn as well and to improve our products. Like any product, there's going to be updates and different version histories. So we're very keen to get feedback on tweaks and changes and different ways of looking things. So across all of the test sites and the live sites that we're working with at the moment, we're looking for feedback, and where possible we'll add that into the tool, and as long as it doesn't confuse what the tool is, and by that I mean this is a normal pathology type filing test result, very comprehensive one, a very user-friendly one. That's where it will be. Will it work across 4 different sites of the same surgery? Yeah, 100%. That was part of the reason for building it, 100%. And then you could have one logic if you had a hub, or you could all have your own copy. If the 4 different sites had clinicians that wanted to work in a slightly different way, they would get their own copy. Here is, it sounds like it's key to get a lead clinician to be the owner of the ranges. Otherwise, you risk different clinicians. Yes, agreed. And there's some compliance to do at your end. You need to think about who's setting the tolerances. And we've got some of our practices that we're working with want that because they want to start to enforce some standardization, whereby they've got lots of locums and working, and not to criticize the locums, but they're like the prostate example. One of the clinicians that we're working with likes prostate to be assessed in 4 separate ranges based on age, doesn't like looking at previous test results. So you can start to enforce some standardization. Is there development for plan for MyBotGP? Yeah, Sanj?
Yeah, it's a really good question. However, the kind of the lens of MyBotGP is slightly reversed. It's sort of reverse engineered. It's basically you're setting your rules, and then it applies your rules, as opposed to tracking the lab results and their ranges, because obviously they do vary, and that's the whole premise about MyBotGP. It's applying your rules to your ranges essentially, and applying them against the lab.
Have you got stats in terms of time saved, cost of time, cost of your product? That's coming through. It's been live over a couple of months. It's coming. We'll have a lot more of that in the next 6 months to a year. But we do know nationally from the slide I showed at the beginning, whether it's believable or not, the current estimates are that on average, you are spending the equivalent to, and this is not locum salary, so this is less, about almost £30,000 a year of clinical time. That's the cost of it, reviewing normal. And when I say normal, it's still obviously you're having to apply rules to filter off as normal per clinician, and that's an NHS stat, and that was the logic for this product. Has MyBotGP got digital approval, and is there a license fee? Yes. I feel it would need a MyBotGP team led by a clinician GP admin at each surgery to manage it. Yes, agreed, 100%. Is there a trial option? Yes, there is, and that's something we wanted to announce at the end of the call, but Rachel's beaten us to it. We are because we've made it much simpler now than previous iterations. Anybody that wants a trial, contact us. There's a contract to organise for normal stuff, and then we'll book you in. We will email you a copy. It's a 5-minute download, and you can start configuring your own rules yourself. So if you're genuinely interested, contact us, and we can facilitate a free pilot, a free trial where you can get your hands on it and start to build confidence yourself. Obviously, building confidence is what's important. Does it go through the task at the global task level?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Can it cope with the results being abnormal if the range and the PSA results in patients? Sanj? I would say
yes. So it comes back to that. As long as you set the MyBotGP to look at the unfile, which will give it the ability to look at the abnormals, and then as long as you can apply the rules through the actual panel, in terms of PSA and actually keywords, etc., or any previous test history results that you want MyBotGP to check, then yes.
Thank you. Are you doing a bot for letter filing? Yes, we are. Complex as it is, that one's an interesting one. Yes, we are. We have Docman coming for EMIS, and we have filing coding for System 1. We've got something really cool for that's at test sites at the moment, whereby you can set the parameters yourself. You can tell it yourself what you want to look at, what you don't want to look at, what codes you want to attach. You do it once, and the second time it sees it, it will remember, and it will go straight through. That will accommodate for different letters changing formats and stuff. It won't, then you can quickly tell it to go through. Are we allowed to run a trial? Yes, 100%. You can. We're really pleased to be able to do that. That was always a no before, and the reason it was a no before is we had to copy your logic and you had to buy robots. All that's gone away. This is a 5-minute download. We'll log a call. We'll show you how to use the drop-down menus, which I did a quick demo of before. It was really as simple as that. And then you can. The important part is to obviously validate that it has replicated your logic and stuff, and we can facilitate that. We do need to have a quick short contract in place just to cover confidentiality and all that stuff. That's not a problem. Do you have a copy of your pricing structure? Yes, I can pop that over, but it's really straightforward. 30 pence a patient, list size, and a 499 setup. It's like having Outlook rules on your email. 100%. 100%. It took a lot of work to see whether we could combine those 6 rules into an algorithm that lives in the background. Age, gender, parameters, reading the pathology results, looking back at previous histories, percentages increase and decrease. That was a team of 13, 14 people and several years of research and work. We managed to do it, and then could we turn that into a user-friendly drop-down menu where you could literally just click buttons on? Yeah. So we've taken those basic Outlook rules, for want of a better word, and given you a user-friendly menu where you can work it out your own rules yourselves. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for attending. Yeah, we can do a demo how it works with Accurix another time. 100%. It just uses Accurix in exactly the same way as if it was a person. That's not a problem. Is it also to look at able to look at medication issued? I think we've left.
Yes, I can pick that one up. So it can. You can add any blood test category into the actual MyBotGP panel, as long as, coming back to the rules, that you can file it based on those rules, as James mentioned, that your ranges, your keywords, previous history checks, any blood test category can be added to MyBotGP.
It's an annual cost, yes. It's a yearly subscription. Packages and stuff, yeah, we can talk. You'll just come back to one of our emails and connect with me, and we can talk to that. It's a yearly cost. It's a subscription model. Sanj, that one's for you. So we're just running out of time, so we'll rush this through in a couple of minutes.
Normal COVID tests can be done 100%. Yeah, they can be dumped. You can file them based on the rules. You just pick up the actual normal against COVID, pop it into the blood test drop down, and it will file it.
Yep, setup, that's correct. Setup cost $499. Will it file smear test results?
Again, coming back to the panel, I think for smears it's likely there are differing rules for smears. They probably wouldn't fall into the actual the panel, the functionality that you can do within the panel, but I would say watch this space. That might come through to the actual abnormal piece. There are differing products coming out. There are more products coming out to do that.
There is VAT applicable. Yes, 499, 30 pence patient. Do you need more pilot sites? We may do. Okay, no, I think we're okay for pilot sites at the moment, but anyone that wants to work as that, we can keep you on the list. But we've gone through that stage now. Can it send tasks to different teams? Yeah, yes, it can. Last questions. Do you need local admin? Yes, just simple download. Oh no admin.
So no admin required. It's a simple download. It lives on your C drive, for want of a better word, and no admin is required to actually install MyBotGP.
If so, please can you share TDA documents? That's not valid. System 1, we hope about 8 weeks. Another presentation. If System 1 goes down, how quickly can we access help from MyBotGP? Yeah, really quickly. But if System 1 goes down, once System 1 comes back up again, MyBotGP will carry on working, just like if you were using it and it crashed. And pilot is around 6 weeks. We're offering 6-week pilot. Please tell us if it sends tasks. Nope. Great. Well, we've still got 92 people on here, which is fantastic. So I think we've done our hour now. If anyone's got any last questions, please pop them in. If not, then as before, we're going to this webinar we put on our site. You should have all had emails from us, so please come back, ask any questions. If you want to be a pilot site, we're offering a no charge pilot, then we can do that for you, where you can test it yourself and use the tool yourself, set your own parameters, short contract to organize. There's my email. And yeah, if they're big PCNs, there are discounts. Yeah, 100%. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much for everyone for attending. Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Lovely to meet you all, sort of, and hopefully we'll speak soon. Thank you.